Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Jenny Aiello, and this is With Love, Jenny, a podcast where we meet ourselves right in the heart of our vulnerability and authenticity. In this sacred space where it's just you and I dive into real life, rich with wisdom and opportunities for deep healing. I explore what it means to truly connect to ourselves, to each other, and to something much greater than us all. In each podcast, I like to meet life right where it touches us most, in our tenderness, in our truth, in our struggles and our strength. So wherever you are on your journey, or whatever it is that you're carrying, no matter how light or heavy, just know I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin today's episode. Hey, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of With Love, Jenny. Oh my goodness. So I don't think I've ever been more excited about an episode as I am the one today. And it's because I believe it will touch you deeply. And if you haven't listened to it yet, in episodes, I think it was 42 and 43, I shared a journey that was one of my 10 hardest things I've done in my life. It's a 17-year and counting journey with my son through addiction and recovery, and what that was like for me. I'm the flip side of the addiction. I am the codependent one. And with every addiction, there is an enabler, a codependent side that goes hand in hand. And to be honest, I had no clue what I was walking into. And it turned out to be one of the hardest things I ever went through, but it was also one that let me grow deeper than anything else I've encountered. So what I am excited today about is that we're going to go behind the curtain of addiction, not in the way it's usually talked about, not in the way that is about people who have not gone through it themselves and statistics and news stories talking about it, but in the raw and honest reality of what it feels like to live inside that addiction. So today we're going deep in it. So I want to say one of the things that I learned along the way quickly from what I didn't know about addiction caused a lot of judgment around why you just can't stop. Why would you do this to yourself? Why would you do this to me? And I didn't understand. And so it's often very, very misunderstood by anyone who hasn't experienced it. And to be honest, it's still hard to understand. But the truth is, it carries the weight of a torment that most of us just can't fathom. And we often can't see it because we're on the outside of it. So my guest today has the courage to share her story with us, not just from the highlights of recovery, but taking us behind the scenes of what it was like in active addiction. So I invite you to listen with an open heart, without judgment, and notice if anything that is shared makes you think in a judgmental way. I'd love to invite you to catch that and maybe rethink that, to open your heart with some compassion. I think it's lacking in this community more than any other community I have encountered. So I want to raise compassion for the millions of people who still struggle. And a lot of them struggle in silence. You know, some of them, you can't help but see it because of where it takes them, as my guest today is going to share that. But it's not just a story of pain either. It's a story of the resilience and the honesty and the possibility for healing. And that's what my guest is passionate about. So because I'm always very transparent here on my little podcast, I want to let you know I am also proud to say that Heather is also my daughter-in-law. And she is so brave and honest and strong and has a heart of gold that wants to help others going through addiction. I just adore her. And part of the reason I adore her is that she actually loves my son. And it was not something I at times wondered if he would ever find that person. And having gone through everything he went through, would he find someone who could have enough compassion? And he did. And together they have given birth to a son. I was blessed with a grandson from John and Heather that I also didn't know I could even begin to hope for during some of those terrifying and dark moments of his addiction. So she's a beautiful mama that I love. She is a beautiful wife and an extra special daughter-in-law. And I have a lot of those. So I want to welcome you, Heather, and thank you so much for being willing to be here with us.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a huge joy to be in your family, and you actually have helped me so much in my growth, more than you even realize over this last year, because it is a continuous journey. It never stops. You can never get complacent. You have to always keep trying to grow, and you've been really instrumental in that too. So.
We have that in common because I don't think I'll ever get done healing all my stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask Heather some questions, and some of them are going to be tough questions for her to get through. I told her she was allowed to cry. I told her she could vape if she needed it because this is going to be some deep conversations, and we just want everybody to be comfortable here. Okay, I'm going to ask Heather some pretty hard questions. And she's always in our talks when we are together, she's always so forthcoming and honest, more so than anyone I've talked to in that world. And not that I've talked to a lot of them, just John, but she just is so, I think that comes, Heather, from your wanting so much. I feel this is part of your journey to birth a purpose in life. I feel you've come through this with a passion to help others and can be that guiding light for others. And so that can give hope to so many people. And that's why I wanted to get you on here, but mostly because if any of our listeners have someone in their family or they themselves are struggling, but want to know, does anybody out there understand what it's like? But mostly people that I know are wondering, one, how do you do this? How do you begin to understand this? And so I came up with some questions that you can tell us, just take us into the journey, and what is actually happening. Why do you all do the things you do when they don't look like you need to suffer? It doesn't it's suffering and it looks painful and to this eye. And so that's why I want to have people understand the minds don't work alike in that way. So first, take us back to the beginning. When you first began using, what do you remember about that? And were you just experimenting or were you trying to find relief back then? How'd you realize it was an addiction?
So first part of the question, I didn't have anything like super traumatic happen to me when I was a kid. I was just a preteen girl and I just was not comfortable in my own skin. I had a really rough go at puberty and mood swings, and I'd say my first drug was honestly self-harm. That started when I was probably 12 or so. And I never wanted to kill myself. I just didn't like how I felt. And so I would use the pain of self-harm as like I got a release off of that. Like it distracted me from how I felt. And I felt extreme highs, extreme lows, just all the things that go along with puberty. And I just didn't really know what to do with it. And I just didn't feel comfortable in my own skin. And that progressed to when I was like 13. I had my appendix taken out and the doctor wrote pain pills, and I didn't know anything about opiates. I didn't know they were addictive. All I know is if I took anything out of the bottle that said hydrocodone on it, I liked how it made me felt. And I could just not, like, I just always had so much swimming around in my head and I just wanted to be down and numb. And so that's kind of how that started. And then, of course, they overly prescribed pain pills back in the day. So, my mom had some in her cabinet and I just kept taking them. And I got strep throat a lot as a kid. And so all the hydrocodone cough syrup, and then started drinking probably when I was 14, I think. And that just, I just wanted more of that. I always had a really hard time with doing things in moderation. If something felt good, I just wanted more of it. And especially if it made me not feel like myself, I just didn't like myself and how I felt naturally. So I just wanted to keep covering that up and get more and more of that. So yeah, it's crazy. People think that people end up on drugs because they had some terrible abuse when they were a kid or whatever. Like I had a very normal upbringing. My parents weren't addicts. We went to church. I had loving parents. I was always fed. I was always cared for. I just didn't like how I felt, and I wanted to change that. And so it was just a really long progression of just getting worse and worse with that. So that's kind of how that
Yeah.
started.
Yeah. And that's good to know. When you said self harm, is that the cutting? Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
cutting and burning.
oh,
So
wow.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That's good for people to know with kids today because that's when it's like, start there,
Yeah.
get therapy quickly, get educated. Even then, if that need to numb out something is activated, they say in the brain, it's even therapy may not stop. But I just want
Yeah.
to,
My mom did all the things. I had a great therapist. She was amazing and I liked the work that she did with me, but they ended up putting me on all kinds of medications. But my therapist was great and I loved her. And we actually did work through some stuff, but it just still, I think, they say once you start using, it starts to rewire your brain and your
yes.
brain starts sending you all those different triggers and responses. And it was just, I just wasn't done yet. It was just beginning, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. They say it does rewire the brain pretty immediate and not with everyone. And that's
Mhm.
what's so confusing why they don't know why. Once you get to that feeling, that's what the engine is running the whole time. They don't have to put it into drive all of a sudden,
Yeah.
but it's just running, waiting for that
Yeah.
opportunity to
It's like
arise.
a monster lying dormant. And as soon as it gets woke up, that's just it.
Yeah, and it's always there right now. They don't have a cure for
Mm-mm.
how to rewire. There are some interesting things out there that they're experimenting with, but right now we don't have anything to remove the sleeping monster. And it's scary to live that way. And that's why your work is can't go to sleep. Your recovery work goes to sleep, then the beast wakes. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a different lifestyle in that way. To me, I sort of smacked my head at one point, like, why are we not all living that way? Right? Like, why aren't we all living with that level of mindfulness and self awareness as we go through our day? And in my coaching world, that's what we strive for. And so it's
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, what did it feel like? And if you can kind of take us through mentally what was going on, emotionally what was going on, physically what was happening, you kind of gave us some of that, but when it escalated into a full blown deep addiction.
Do you mean like what it felt like when I started using, or like what it felt like long term, the progression?
I think the long term or when it began to really disrupt your life.
Just like a loss of control. And the one thing that I think really, like I knew in my gut that what I was doing was wrong, but I also had this mindset. I was so rebellious. And so to begin with, I was so attracted to things that were taboo. I'm a musician. I was very much into music, especially 90s grunge music, and all the artists were on drugs. It seemed cool, like it seemed like some sort of, I don't, it seemed cool to be an outcast, I guess. But I
Mm-hmm.
also knew in my gut that what I was doing was wrong. But it's like once that beast got awoken, it's like no matter how much I knew what I was doing was wrong, that beast's voice was louder. Especially the further I got into addiction and the darker it got, it's like my true self was in the back of my head, like trying to tell myself to stop, but I just couldn't. That addiction voice was much louder, but there was a period of time where it felt fun and I was just kind of escaping and just numbing myself because I really really liked that feeling of just being numb because, as I said, I was not happy with who I was as a person, how I felt. I've struggled with ADHD most of my life, my brain going too fast, and I don't like it. So it's like I want it to just stop and to not have to feel anything. And that's what my appeal was to depressants like opiates and things like that. I wanted to just slow my nervous system down, slow my body down, and slow my mind down. And so, that's kind of that's what I was seeking. And then I was also really attracted to that fast lifestyle to begin with. But it all still felt wrong. Deep in my gut, it all felt wrong. And I think that knowing what you're doing is wrong and choosing to do it anyway takes away pieces of your soul over time. It chips away and it starts to fuel this monster of shame and guilt. And then you feel bad about yourself. So then you just want to keep using to go on top of it because then you don't want to feel bad about yourself for what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a question about that is how big of a factor is shame through that journey?
Oh gosh, is terrible. Especially, I mean, the further I got in, like whenever before I had kids, whenever I met my 13-year-old's dad, and that's who I got introduced to hard drugs like heroin and crack and needles and all that stuff. I was 19 and I had met him at some random party, and I was just so attracted to that lifestyle because, again, the music. I just thought that Kurt Cobain was cool. And so whatever, like it, and it just seems so stupid looking back at it. But that shame and that I was raised Christian, I was raised with good morals, I was raised with what it meant to be a good person. And I knew in my gut, and so doing things that go against what I truly feel deep down inside just for some very quick physical gratification,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it did not feel good. And the more shame and guilt I felt, the more that fueled my addiction because that was the only thing I knew at that point. That was my like first go-to coping mechanism for feeling anything negative whatsoever is to just numb it. Just numb it. Don't think about it. Don't just put it in the back of your mind. Just get high and don't think about it. And that goes with my entire life mostly is just procrastinating. If things are difficult, if things don't, if things are hard to face, if things are painful emotionally or physical, just don't deal with it. Just
Yeah.
try not to think about it and just get high instead. That's what my brain kept telling me to do over and over and over. And even though I knew it was wrong and I knew it didn't feel good, I couldn't stop. It's like that urge was so strong. It's like nothing I could do fight against it.
Yeah. Yeah. I used to get the feeling I finally got caught up in understanding enough to know that shaming John for anything was food for the beast.
Yeah.
All I was doing is shoveling in food that fed the addiction.
Yeah.
And so the judgment of that, and it was hard because there was reasons to be in judgment of something like on my end, you see life-changing decisions happening and things that affect them that long term are going to follow and wanting to shame them into recovery. And I just want to say that out loud, like it doesn't work
No, it
because
doesn't.
you've got so much shame already
Yeah.
building up. So that, and judgment will always, it comes with shaming. If you're in judgment, you're in some way shaming.
Yeah.
Whatever you're judging. So
There was never a point in my life or my addiction that I didn't feel deep down that what I was doing was not right. And so, but it's like my brain, and this goes back to like the science of how addiction works. My brain at that point was so wired wrong that my brain was just trained for that instant gratification to not feel what you're feeling. That started when I started using self-harm, and that just triggered it, and it just went on off to just, you don't like how you're feeling, this is wrong. Oh my God, I feel so bad about myself. I need to deal with this. But the only way my brain knew how to deal with it was just to numb the feeling, putting
Right.
off long-term consequences because they're too hard and too painful to look at, but it's like I just couldn't stop. Like, and it sucks to feel so powerless over your own body. It
Yeah.
was very difficult, especially after having kids. that probably sent myself into such a dark tailspin over the guilt and shame, because I had periods of clean time and had kids in recovery, and then got complacent, stopped working on myself. Because I was so caught up in being a mom, and I was a single mom with two kids, and went to church every Sunday. I volunteered in the ministry, the youth ministry with 2 year olds twice a month. I went on a mission trip to New York. I was working full time. I had my own place, doing all these things, but I wasn't doing anything for myself
Mhm.
to keep. Like, I quit going to meetings, I quit doing all of those things. But I thought, well, as long as I'm doing all these positive things, then it's take care of everybody else and yourself last mentality that most moms have. And eventually, it's like it's so sneaky. Like, one bad decision after the next just starts to snowball, and it wakens that
Mm.
beast right up again. So, being a mom who relapsed, and like I put all my identity in being a mom, that was what was most important to me. So then feeling like I betrayed my kids and the things that happened in my active addiction and all of that, it fueled that shame so much more. And
Yeah.
it was just, again, that coping skill of using to cover up all the shame and the guilt and all the bad decisions. It's just this terrible cycle. It just keeps going, and like I could not snap out of it. No matter, I know, like when I had relapsed the last time, I was living with my mom. Me and my two girls were living with my mom, and she noticed that I just wasn't right, and so she tried to talk to me about it. And she had said she'd found me a bed in treatment in Kentucky, and I was supposed to go the next day, and everything in me wanted to go. And like, my true self was in my head screaming, please go get help and be a mom to your kids. But that addiction was louder, and it's like my body was on autopilot, and I just couldn't. And it's like, I think of like myself being inside of this giant robot, and it's like my true self is just like really tiny up in the back of the head of this giant robot, and there's like I have no control over it whatsoever, no matter how much I wanted to. It's just I was just in the grips of that so bad that I just couldn't stop until somebody made me, the prison system. But but
We'll
yeah.
get to that. We'll get
Yeah.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about my third question, which, addiction, they say, is a family disease. And so it can often fracture the family. It did with us. What was it actually, to me, exposed other things. It wasn't just the addiction. It was like there were cracks and that one just broke us open. So, but what was the hardest part of being a mom during that time? And you just sort of addressed that. And then what's been the hardest part of your healing journey now? Like, how did it influence your addiction journey to go through active addiction, having two kids?
Yeah, it completely split my family apart. It felt for the longest time of like just me and my two girls against the world. We were super tight. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. So, Autumn, my 13-year-old, I relapsed whenever she was like 9 months old, 6 or 9 months old. I spent her first birthday in detox. That was really hard. And I was still so young though. Like, had her, I think, when I was 21. But anyway, but I got it together. I went to a sober living house. I still wasn't completely myself though. And I've been looking back now and trying to kind of look at my life and see how things played out. And it's like the addiction goes beyond way more than just using the drug. It's also putting other people, other friendships, other relationships, anything a part of that life in front of your family. And so, I had gotten clean. I'd spent her first birthday in detox, went to treatment, got out, went to sober living, but I was like so focused on the social aspect of it. And I'm so shameful about that part of my life too. So it's like I was trying to be a mom, but I was also trying to find a boyfriend at the same time. I wasn't doing what I needed to do to actually heal and recover from my addiction. I was going to meetings some, but it wasn't until I started working steps that I really started to get recovery. But I had started dating someone, and I moved out of sober living and we got a place together. And then Autumn moved back in with me when she was about 2.5 years old. At this point, I was pregnant with my second child, Balin. when I found out I was pregnant with her, I really buckled down. I started really working steps again and really trying to recover because I wanted to be a mom that I could be proud of again. I wanted to be someone who cared for her kids and put her kids first and all of that. So I did, well for a while. And then at some point I stopped going to meetings again. And I was still living in my hometown at this point. And I started hanging out with people I shouldn't be hanging out with. I started drinking from time to time, but not using hard drugs. And I ended up losing my job, and me and the girls moved back in with my mom. And my mom is one of my biggest supporters, but she's also one of my biggest triggers. And so living with her is just never a good idea because we just butt heads too much. And I started cycling out more. And then very quickly, within like 2 or 3 months of moving back in with her, with my girls, relapsed. But me and Autumn and Balin were such a tight knit trio, like, and Balin's dad didn't really have anything to do with her for like 4 years. And so I was like, she was 4.5 or so whenever I relapsed. So my mom had to kick me out because I wouldn't go to treatment as much as I wanted to. I just couldn't stop. And so then I went from couch to couch, homelessness, whatever. Balin went to go live with her dad, and Autumn stayed with my mom. So my relapse split my daughters up, the sisters. They were extremely close. It
Mhm.
damaged my relationship with my mom. And this is something that I was really on the fence about even talking about on here. But it's important, I think, for people to understand these situations where you look and you say, why would you do that? Like what? Like for people that aren't in addiction to understand, like I stole money out of my kids' piggy bank to pay for drugs, and that's
Yeah.
it was just a 10, $20, but still that was my own kids. I stole
Yeah.
money from my mom, like I did. And anytime I would do things like that to pay for my addiction, it's like I was just so ashamed of myself. And it was like doing this walk of shame to the pawn shop to sell whatever it was I took from my mom or whatever. And it's like I was so angry and so ashamed of myself even doing that stuff. And I remember thinking, like, why are you doing this? Like, just hurry up and get it done so you can get your fix and you don't have to feel it anymore. Like that's what I kept saying. Like I was so anytime I was like dope sick and I just could not, I'm a wuss when it comes to that stuff. I cannot sit through the withdrawals. And so, like, if I ran out of a way to get money and then I had to resort to stealing from my family because they say you hurt the people closest to you, well, that's exactly what happens. Like, I wasn't brave enough to go rob a store, but, my mom had all this jewelry from her whole entire life, a class ring that was solid gold that she'll never get back because I sold it somewhere that was melted down, just all of these things that I still carry. But it's like, I didn't want to be doing any of that, but I could not stop using. And I had, like, my brain is telling me, do whatever you have to do. This is life or death because it does. Opiates especially, it rewires that instinct part of your brain that tells you you have to eat, sleep, whatever to survive. It's telling you, no, you have to get high, you're going to die if you don't. Do whatever it takes. And it's so I'm constantly doing these things that I just hate myself for doing just to get the next one. So like it completely tore my family apart. I have my 13-year-old back, but I do not have my second daughter Balin back. She still lives with her dad. So that's a relationship. They do have a relationship, but it will never be what it was. And even after being clean for a couple of years, it still made my mom uncomfortable to have me in her home. When I would come home to visit, I don't really go to her house very often, because it's like it just brings back too many bad memories, trust issues. My mom got to the point where she didn't want to be around me and leave her purse down. She'd always keep everything close. It's like it was just terrible.
Yeah. Building back that trust is such a part of the journey. It's that healing journey. And I know for me, the PTSD of that, of waking up to find, John sneaking into our room to find my purse or whatever in the middle of the night. And, it's hard, it's hard to repair, but it is repairable. And
Yeah.
you just take steps, I too lost one more important than anything else, a piece of jewelry. And I didn't feel angry about it. I was surprised that I didn't because I still had John. And it's like, as long as he's breathing, we have hope in his life. Would I give that up for his life? Yes. Did I love that that's what he did with it? No. Can I ever replace it? No. But I couldn't replace him either. And that's what I had to stay focused on. But you're right. Those instincts to not trust are wired in now to the other side of us, and you all are like, and I always felt like it was a seesaw, when John truly was trustworthy, I didn't treat him that way, and that brought up shame for him.
Yeah.
And I then saw me contributing to the cycle of shame, and around we went for so many years.
I want to say too, I want to touch on that honesty part, because that was another thing. Hearing you say like you weren't mad at John because at least you still had him. Like, I think what made my mom the most angry is when she would notice something was missing and she would try to confront me about it. It's like I would know that she knew. I knew that but I could not be honest. And that's another thing, another situation where it's like, in the back of my head, my true self is saying, just give it up, Heather. Like, why can you be that stupid to think she really believes what you're saying right now? There's like blatant obvious. And some of the stuff that I've read and some classes I've done, it's like that's another thing that our brains trick us into doing, because admitting the truth would be admitting that you're powerless right then. You have no control over what you're doing. You have no control over your life. You have no control over your addiction. So admitting the truth is like giving up on the facade, and it's like you just can't. And that frustrates me so much that I would just lie like that and be such an untrustworthy person. But it's just so now, and looking at now and healing, and because that was another part of the question too, like how that journey is now. I try to just be as honest as I can in any situation, and sometimes it's a struggle for me to be honest in ways like where I need to tell somebody the truth about something, but I don't want to hurt their feelings. So that's kind of the part that I'm working on right now. But seeing how it affects, so like my 13-year-old, I have full custody of her back. She's been back living with me for a few years now, but she's got severe ADHD issues. Or did. We've been doing a lot of therapy and a lot of work over the last year, but the kid she was when she first moved in with me versus the kid she is now, completely different. Like, she had such bad emotional regulation issues. I can see the struggle in her, and I know how important those first couple of years of life are for a kid, and that early developmental, it's just so crucial. And it hurts so much as a mom to know that I just completely screwed that up, and I'm now seeing how that's playing out as she's a teenager, and also seeing things in her that I used to do that worry me, but at least I went through it, so I kind of know what it's like for her. But I'm completely honest with her about when I see her, like, she's been struggling with self-harm some. And it's actually gotten a lot better. She's very rarely doing it anymore now, but she started going through that too. And I just have very real conversations with her. Like, she has lived through, she's old enough to remember seeing me high. She knows, she's seen needles laying around. She's seen whatever. So there's no like hiding that from her. So we just have very real open conversations like, Autumn, look, this is what I went through. I know you don't think I understand what you're going through, but this is what I went through. This is what happened to me. Like we can talk about this stuff. And so she has very open communication with me now. And it took time. She didn't trust me when she first moved in with me. She wanted to live with me. It's like she romanticized this idea of being back with her mom, but that relationship took time, and we butted heads a lot more than we do now in the beginning. But just simple things of trying to have consistency on chores, on anything, it's like it was just pure chaos. But the kid that she's growing into now, I'm so proud of her, of the work that she's doing, because she's having to do work too to heal from my mistakes and how they affected her. So we're trying to do it together, and just grow together. So
I just love Autumn, and watching her kind of maturing in this, and watching the two of you is beautiful to see. And the healing doesn't end. This is what it means. We have to keep doing it, right? Ourselves, and then allowing everyone else impacted by it it's such a gift if they will. Some people have people in their lives that they won't do the work to heal it and understand it and get through, like, how it impacted them. And you don't have control over that. You only have power over ourselves. So that's awesome. Next question. Thank you so much for all your sharing, Heather. I know this is a lot. Yeah. What do you want other parents to know about loving someone who's actively using? If you could sit down with your own mother during those years, what would you want her to understand about you that maybe she doesn't or didn't? And talk to us about what we need to know as parents if there's a child or a loved one that is in full-blown active addiction.
First thing is, and I've told her this, but it's not your fault. What was happening to me, what I was doing, was not a result of her bad parenting. It was not oh, well, if she could have done this, she should have done that, or whatever. It's not your fault. My mistakes are my mistakes. But I think the other one biggest thing is I didn't want to be doing what I was doing. I was not in control of myself. I just think back about all of those arguments of like, why won't you just be honest? You're just lying straight to my face, and all of these, like, I just couldn't. Don't try to force someone in active addiction to live by spiritual principles, because it's just not going to work. If someone is deep in active addiction, they are not in control of their body. They are not in control of their emotions. They are not in control of their responses or any of that. So do not think that is your real family member, your real son, your real daughter, your real whatever. That is not them. So I think something you told me one time is don't talk to the addict. And that is so true. Like that's not really them. So try to hold on to that real version of them that you love and that is still in there. And you have to set boundaries for yourself, because no amount of trying to force the person to do the right thing is really going to work. I feel like, at least in my life, no matter how many times my mom tried to force me to go to treatment or whatever, I wasn't ready yet. But yeah, it's not your fault, and that's not the real them. So just try to understand that their brain is just not functioning properly. Their brain is not wired properly. They're not having normal responses, normal thought processes. Their brain is completely taken over by darkness and toxicity. So
yeah, that's really good, because it was really hard for me as a mom. I went down that rabbit hole and turned over, every rock and beat myself up with it, going, what did I do? What did I do? And I can go all the way back to, I remember one moment that I just lost it, and with John, and he was, he was just actually stating something he wanted, and it was just the last thing on this mama's nerves. And I was like, that's just it, like, we're not going to the pool today. And he just crumbled. And I just thought that's what caused all that. Like, I just went to that memory and said, it's all my fault. It's all my fault. And I finally, when we were in our meetings as parents, which was really good for us, they said, you didn't cause it. You can't control it. And there is no cure for this. And you have to understand your own powerlessness. Mm-hmm. And boy, I didn't like that. I didn't like it. I wanted to deny that just as much as I bet the addict wants to deny feeling powerless over, the addiction. That's the first thing you have to do, right? And that's the first step. So, yeah. So that's important for, I think, parents or loved ones to understand, is quit looking for all that and quit fighting with them. When John was actively using, I didn't heed that advice. I would argue and make it about, why are you telling me a lie when it's, the evidence would be sitting right in front of us, it would be just like, I don't understand that, and so on this side of things, it's like, can we at least start, if you're not going to trust me, who are you going to trust, and it's not about that at all. They just have to trust the drug, because that's what keeps them alive. and you won't compete with that and win. And
You
so
won't.
what does eventually stop the train of thought that I have to use to stay alive? What finally stops an addict from using?
I don't know for anyone else. I know for my personal experience, but hitting your bottom. I mean, some people get what they call in meetings and stuff the gift of desperation. Like something their addiction took them to such a dark place that really just shook them, and so that shakenness and that fear and that pain and desperate for something to change can carry them through the first 60, 90, 100 days of trying to stay clean. But not everybody gets that gift of desperation. I did. But they say that you can't force someone to get clean, but in my story, actually there was a forced intervention in the end that really actually did help me. But your brain just needs time to heal. My brain just needed time to heal. Your brain can slowly start to rewire itself a little bit, but they say that it takes up to 2 years for your brain, for the fog to clear, and for your brain to really start to rewire those synapses that are telling you like, oh, you need to do this instead of eat, or you need to lie about this. Like all of those really bad instant, just automatic responses, they slowly kind of start to heal over time, but then you also have to do work, because if you just stop using, then you're just going to be a miserable clean addict, because the drugs essentially aren't the problem. The problem is in my mind. Wasn't the drugs. There's an issue with me and how I was thinking and the way I was processing things before I ever started using drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So doing work to try to kind of retrain my brain and thinking at things a different way, or trying to learn to love myself. For me, also trying, like, having faith in something bigger than myself has helped, because
Mm-hmm.
ego and selfishness show up a lot in my story. And so having faith in something that's greater than me, which I really struggled with for a while, and I finally surrendered. That's the other thing, just surrendering to the fact that you're completely powerless. The second you can just say, you know what, I give up, like I can't do this anymore, then you can start to that process of healing. But I think there's not one right answer to that question, because everybody's story is different. Everybody needs something different. Some people can go to treatment and get it right the first time, and they call those a one chip wonder. They they get clean, they start going to meetings, they pick up their first little key tag or coin or whatever, and then they're fine. They're clean for the rest of their life, but that's not been my story.
That's an important thing for parents to hear if they're just starting this journey, because I thought when John went to treatment that he'd just come home and would pick up life, and he'd be clean. And they were like, relapse is part of recovery, and
Mhm.
every relapse leads you closer to the last relapse, and as long as he's alive, then there will be one eventually. And so as a parent, it's a tightrope, right? Because you want to do those interventions. You want, we rest easier if you're safe. And letting you hit your bottom, I always said it's a very unfair thing to ask a mother to let their child walk off a cliff in front of their eyes, which is what it's like, seeing you ruin your life or chances, or to do things that are taken away, or that you might die and go, it might not be a bottom. Always said, it's like he hit a bottom. He hit a bottom. When is he going to quit hitting bottoms and start like seeing results? And then is the bottom death for some people, or did they not get to their bottom because of the messy drugs out there, that are
Yeah.
laced. And so it's such a crapshoot that you all play, and parents have to recognize that we are still powerless over it. But it's kind of a cruel way to have to walk as a mother. But I also, that's what it taught me. so much, because the truth is we're powerless anyway. I can't say that somebody's not going to be driving home late from work and get hit by a drunk driver out on the roads. I'm powerless over that. So I had to put it in context. I actually had to let go. I had to literally let go of the mother relationship, because that part was what was so hard in order to stay on the journey with John. So
it's hard. I think, like I said, everybody's different, but the first time I went to treatment, I did stay clean for a couple of years. That's whenever I moved to the beach, I got married, I had Autumn, but eventually I moved back home and just things started to spiral out. But yeah, just that continued work. And I think everybody's bottom is different. And I think that your bottom can always get worse. I mean, there were moments where I thought I'd hit my bottom and I didn't think that it could possibly get worse. I remember my first time going to meetings and stuff and thinking, oh, I would never do that. Like hearing somebody else share about the stuff they did in active addiction, things that women do to get drugs, oh my, I would never do that. That would never be me. Like I couldn't imagine doing that. Well, that's a big yet, because every time you relapse, your bottom gets worse. You do things you say you'd never do, and it is very progressive, and it gets so much worse. It gets so much worse.
And that's why it's just so hard to watch. And I found myself functioning better during relapse than recovery. Like when he was clean, I was more nervous because I was just waiting for that next relapse. And at least when he was in it, I had learned how to roll with that. And so it's such an interesting journey together. It borders on that level of sanity that you just think, where is it? Where is the sanity of this journey?
I will say my mom, like she had to do the tough love thing, kick me out, set boundaries and all that stuff, but she never stopped checking on me. Even when I was on the streets and I was homeless, like I never went like more than a couple of days without talking to my mom, because first of all, she had my girls, and that was my only connection to my kids, was to talk to my mom. Sometimes she would bring them to a park and I'd meet them at the park and see them for a little while. But if I was hungry or whatever, like, of course, she'd never give me money or anything, but which was fine. But if I was really hungry, she'd bring me a pizza or something to whatever trap house I was staying in at the time. She put herself in some pretty crappy situations just to make sure I had something to eat, but yeah, so I always knew that my mom's love was there, and I always knew that her support was there. If I could just somehow stop using and get to the other side of it, I knew that she would be there to love on me and support me.
And that was important.
That helped a lot. It really did help a lot. So
yeah, as a parent, it's hard to maintain that and hold tough, like set the boundaries and hold the boundaries, but still be compassionate and loving. And that's the tightrope walk, is you don't want to enable. We learn that's like, people will say, you're enabling it if you take food. And it's, I took food. John called homelessness camping for a while. Mm-hmm. I'm just camping. And it was really cold and he was hungry. And I took him, he met me in a parking lot, and I took him soup and a sandwich and sat and asked how he was doing, and just let him know I love you. And it was important to me because you never know when that could be your last words, so I always made sure I didn't end in anger, but it wasn't easy sometimes because you're just, oh my gosh, it's so infuriating sometimes because you want so bad to get through. And I will tell you, if there was a way to get through that wall, that addictive wall where I felt like John was behind the wall and the beast was in front of the wall. And if there was a way to get to him through the beast and the wall, moms would find it. The mama bear in us knows no boundaries, and that love knows no boundaries. And so if there was a way to pierce it, we would have figured it out by now and would be learning about it. So what role did prison play in your turning point, in your story?
Oh, you know,
Speaking of tough love.
yeah, yeah. So in my addiction, before, like after I had relapsed, but before my mom had to kick me out, there was like a week where I kept stealing her car keys after she'd go to sleep and take her car and her wallet to the gas station at the ATM and draw money out to pay for my drugs. And eventually, nothing in her wanted to see me go to jail, but she also could not afford that financial loss. So she had to report it as fraud to the bank. And she didn't know that the bank was going to press charges against me, but they did, of course. That was the only way for them, for her, I guess, to get her money back. She didn't technically press the charges, but anyway, so I went to jail. Took them a while to. I had so many other. I went to jail for so many other things too. I was a booster to support my drug habit, so I would like go into Walmart and steal a bunch of stuff to sell it on the streets or pawn shops or whatever. So I already had a whole. They knew me in Walmart very well. It's still to this day considered felony breaking and entering for me to even be in a Walmart parking lot. So yeah, I had resorted to stealing from her, and she had to or the bank had to press charges. And then I went to jail for a while, and then I got out for probation, and I was supposed to go to treatment and do all this stuff, but I wasn't locked up long enough. Like every time I would go to jail, county jail never helped. I was only in there for a couple months, long enough to kind of dry out some, but not long enough for my brain to get that time to heal a little bit. And so as soon as I'd get out, it would go right back to it. I would think I'd want to get clean, it sounded good. And I knew within me that I really wanted to do it. But it's like my brain was just still in such a high response of get high to not feel this, get high to not feel this. I'd sit in jail and cry every night. My mom would send me pictures of my girls, and I would just cry and just feel all this pain of like, oh my God, like, what am I doing with my life? I miss my girls. I miss my family. I miss who I am as a person. I miss myself, and I wasn't there yet. I just was. So I get out and I go right back to it. But anyway, they had got it set up as like a part of a deal with probation on those charges that I would be on supervised probation and go to treatment. Well, I got out immediately, took off with some guy and started getting high and did not go to the treatment center. Like I was supposed to get released from jail. My mom was supposed to be there to pick me up and take me straight to the treatment center. Did not do that at all. This person that I was friends with beat her to the jail. Really, I would have went with her if she would have gotten there first. To be honest, I probably would have, but somebody else got there first. I went with them. It was some guy I was kind of halfway dating. And so I told him over the phone I was getting out. So anyway, I disappeared again, absconded on my probation, and I was on the run. I was on the run a lot while I was in active addiction because I would get arrested for stuff and then never go back to my court date. So I like perpetually had warrants out for my arrest. So I got out. I did not go to treatment. I also did not report to my probation, and I went on the run again for like another year and a half. I think I made it. And so I was living on the streets in trap houses, and if I could manage enough money in really crappy hotels, but I couldn't ever get hotels in my name because I had warrants. So I'd actually like talked my mom into it a couple times, putting the hotel in her name when I had money, and that was probably definitely enabling, but I guess she just didn't really want to see me have to sleep on the street. So as long as I had enough money for a hotel room, she would put her ID on it. But that only happened a couple times. But so eventually I guess I can't skip over this part. Eventually, I made a really bad decision in my active addiction. Me and people that I considered friends decided to rob a drug dealer. I wasn't physically there when it happened, but I helped set it up through my phone. And I guess, I was pretty stupid to think that said drug dealer didn't realize that I had a hand in it. So like I was on the streets, I was sleeping in an abandoned building, off and on a couple different abandoned buildings in High Point, and he had pulled through and I saw his car and I was like, oh man, I'm going to see if he has any dope. So he's like, oh yeah, just go ahead and get it in the car. I've got some. So we just got to go back to the house and get it. And that was it for the next couple months of my life. He definitely knew that I was a part of it. And I was held hostage in his basement for like the next couple of months. My entire family thought I was dead. There's a whole missing persons report. This guy forced girls to do lots of things, and made money off of them so that they could help support their drug habit. Some of them were willingly doing it. Some of them, honestly, none of it was really willingly, because when your addiction is telling you you have to get high, you really sacrifice a lot of yourself. But I was being held in the basement and finally got out of that situation and was able to get away and run away. And when I was like a couple miles to someone's house that I knew. So I ran to that person's house, and the first thing I did was call my mom. And I was like, I told her where I was at. I said, Mom, please don't call the cops, because I walked to this gas station I had like 50 cents in my pocket, and I was trying to just buy like a single cigarette. And I walked to this gas station, and the guy was looking at me funny, and he was like, "You're on the door." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Your picture's on the door." So I go out and I look at the front door, and there is a picture of me that says missing, contact High Point Police Department if you have any information, all this stuff. It was a very, very surreal experience. Like, it was very strange to see that. And so I called my mom. She came with the police. And at first, I was angry at first, because all I wanted was a real meal, because I had been not being fed properly where I was at. And to be honest, half the time I was eating cat food. So I just wanted a real meal, like before I had to go to jail. Like, I knew that this prison sentence was facing me. I had absconded for long enough. Like, I knew it was coming, and I couldn't fight it. I couldn't run away from it anymore. I had to face it. And this was that time. I just wanted a real meal. So I was begging my mom, can I please just go to McDonald's or something before I go to jail for the next 14 months? But she knew that if we did that, I would probably run. And one of the police officers that came actually went to the church that I grew up going to. So he was already aware of my story and who I was, and was actually volunteered to be one of the ones to come to take me in. And in the car on the way there, he called the preacher from the church I grew up going to and talked to him on my way to jail. And it was just a very emotional experience. But on one hand, I was angry because I just wanted some real food. Of course, I wanted to get high one more time before I had to go, because I was dope sick and all that stuff. But at the same time, it was like this huge weight lifted off of my chest. Like, finally, I can
Mhm.
stop running. This is completely out of my control now. I don't have to keep fighting this anymore. Like, I was just so broken and so just done for it. Like, I didn't, like, for most of the time I was at the house, I didn't care whether I lived or died. Like, I just was over it. So it was just a huge weight lifted off of my chest to finally surrender myself emotionally and physically and just have to go in. So prison was very much an important positive part of my story. There's a lot of stuff corrupt and bad with the prison system, but it saved my life. And my mom making that decision, the very hard decision to call the cops and have me taken in, was what also saved my life. And I'm very grateful for her to that. And like, whenever I finally did, like, being in county absolutely sucked, because where I'm from, the county jail is just, it's just awful. But when I finally got to actual prison, I spent like 2 or 3 months in county waiting to be sentenced to go. I finally got to prison. There's a little bit more freedom. They had drug classes at the prison I went to. So it was very, very good for me. I was able to start talking to Autumn again. I could not talk to Balin, because once she went to go move in with her dad, they kind of just shut out me and my family. I mean, kind of understandably so. But anyway, I actually lost full custody of Balin while I was in prison, because they served me with the custody papers and took me to custody court while I was in prison. So I had to go to custody family court on a video screen from prison. And that was very hard, to lose like all physical custody and no visitation or anything while I was sitting in prison. That was very difficult. But so yeah, but I was able to really work on myself and think about some stuff, and just have that time and space for my brain to detox. And because I did 14 months in prison, so that was enough time for my brain to really start to kind of detox, and I could try to start coming up with a game plan. Like, I knew I had plenty of time to think about it, to figure out what was going to be my best decision. At one point, I was going to go straight from prison to another treatment center, like a long-term women's program that was actually on a farm. And changed my mind kind of at the last minute because I've been away from my family and my kids for so long that I didn't want to go to another institution. I wanted to just get out, go to a sober living house where I could get a job and start working towards getting my kids back and being a mom again. So that's what I did. I went to a women's sober living house, an Oxford house that is for women with children. Like you can live there with your kids. So Autumn started coming and staying with me like every other weekend and stuff. And I stayed there for about a year and a half until John and I got a place together. But yeah.
Yeah. Wow. It's just, what do you say to people who hear a story like that and say, well, you deserved it? Like, I know in your mind, you're like, I heard you say, well, I can understand why. But what do you say to the people that are like, well, you should have seen it coming? Just that hardcore judgment. What would be something for them to know?
Well, I've never had anybody tell me, well, you deserved it.
That's good. That's
but
good.
I mean, I guess it would just depend on how they said it, because I'm currently working steps, and part of that is you look at, well, first you write down all the resentments you have towards people, and then the next part is the part you played in it. So you have to look at the part you played in situations where you're angry at someone. So I did deserve what happened to me. So they're not wrong. I needed to go to prison. That whole situation where I was missing, that was a direct result of decisions I made from actively using. I don't think anybody ever deserves to be beaten and held hot, all that terrible stuff.
Right.
But it
Right.
still was a result of my active addiction. It was because of a decision I made, a situation I put myself in. And so
part of your recovery and your sobriety is taking the full ownership.
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
a very crucial part in recovery, and something that if people don't do, again, just because someone stops using drugs does not mean that they recover. You have to be willing to look at the painful stuff. You have to be willing to look at the part you played in it. And you have to you can't move past it. You can't just live your life thinking you're a victim all the time. That never helps you heal. It never helps you move past anything. So there's plenty of situations where people truly are victims, and there's nothing that they did to cause that to happen to them. But in my story, it's very easy for me to see what I did to cause situations to happen in my life. But yes, I have to be able to look at that and take responsibility for my actions. I said this earlier, there's a lot of selfishness and ego that shows up in my story. And so now where I'm growing and doing work is trying to get outside of myself and look at how things that I do affect other people and how it affects my family and my loved ones, and what can I do to work on myself. One, to learn to love myself again and to not be so full of guilt and shame all the time. Like, because I do have to look at the mistakes I made, but if I just sit in them, then it's like this weird twisted form of selfishness because I'm getting self-obsessed about beating myself up. So I have to look at it and recognize it and see what I did, but then move past it to the solution. Like, okay, well, this is what you did. This is how it affected your family, your kids, and yourself. But now what can I do differently to not do that again? Instead of just staying stuck in this, oh, because I did that for a few days actually just recently, because I was doing this step where I'm looking at resentments, and I had to look at my life from 20 to 30, and then 30 to 36 was really hard. And for like 2 days, I stayed stuck in this, like, oh my God, I'm just a terrible person. My whole life has just been selfishness, and I've never gotten anything right. And anything I touch, I destroy it because I'm just this selfish monster. And then I was like, oh my God, like obsessing over that is still being selfish because I'm not focusing on the solution and how I can help people in my life today and how I can love myself. And if I'm not loving myself, then I'm just miserable. And I start snapping at everybody and being mean about stuff. And
wow. And that's, the interesting thing that I think about listening to you is that with an addiction, it's non-negotiable. Like your life does depend on doing that work to look inward, right? And go through those moral inventory, go through the resentments, go through your life. Have I forgiven myself? Have I forgiven others? And I call that shadow work in my field. It's like we have to go into our own dark shadow, and it's just like a burial ground of emotions that we buried, but they're still alive. And they can, in your case, come up and haunt you. But I think they also come through, in a moment of getting triggered. One of those pops up, and we say things we don't, we can't take back, and we make decisions that and impact a trajectory of our entire life. And they're not as bold and in front of everybody as it is with addiction. And that's what I did during John's journey. It's like, it's my version of this. I think people on the other side often sit on a high horse and say, I don't do those things. Like you even said you did, until you do. And that's what I think we are. And it's such an opportunity for amazing work to not stay in a victim mentality. And I think all of the mind of the addict or the beast it's pure ego. It's always selfish. It will.
Yes.
It will do anything, but tell the truth. And it's just, and I did have to separate the addict from John, and I would see it. I could see it before he used, and I'm like, yeah, I'm talking to the addict right now. So, and I'm not using it. Yeah, that's my point. I'm talking to the addict right now. Yeah. And so the arrogance, there was and John, if anybody were to know him as you do, he's so humble and so gentle and so kind and easy. He's like this easy child. He was easy, just whatever, mom, and there is this calmness about him and a gentleness about him. But then there can be this arrogance. And when it shows up, the contrast is so huge that it kind of makes you go back a little bit like, oh no, who's that? Because it's not John. And it doesn't mean he's using, but it means that active mindset is kicking in, and it's go do something, get yourself back in the right mind. We're at an hour. Thank you, Hudson. I want to close out, but ask you to come back because I still have 5 more questions. So if you're okay with that, I'm going to close us out. And just for you all to know, as you're listening to this, one of the things I do is record a meditation. You can go to the show notes and get a link to the meditation. And it really is designed to take you into a place where you can find the same peace and the same centeredness and groundedness that both the addict and the person loving them have in common, is that we're all seeking to go back into that place. And so this meditation will be designed for that. And you're welcome to download it for free. And I hope it helps. I hope it leads you into a good mental space. Also, before we wrap up, I want to just take a minute, Heather, to say thank you for the courage it takes to share a story like yours, only because I know it does tap into that shame. And what I felt confident about is you are doing your work. And the sooner you release that completely, which I believe you can, maybe just keep a little bit for humility, but to be able to release that, to know that people do see more than your story. People do see more than what you have done or what, your record or whatever is. It's, I see you. I saw you the minute I looked in your eyes at ordering pancakes the first time we met. And it's, to me, every addict out there, whether they're laying passed out on the street or homeless in an abandoned building or just walking around with a sign, every addict has a family somewhere. And that's what I see. you have a mom somewhere. And that's where my heart gets compassionate. Like I want to say a prayer. I want to do whatever I can. And to me, that was the only place I didn't feel powerless, is that I do believe there is a power greater than ourselves. And I can speak into that. Over any time I see them, I offer prayers, because I know there's a mom out there wondering where their kid is, or a dad or a sister, a sibling or child even. And so, yeah, let's all start to have more compassion on this path, because it's dark and it's hard for everyone. And there's just no room for judgment. We've got to get on with loving each other better and understanding this, which is what you've done such a good job of showing us, what it's like and why it's just not as simple as stopping. It's just not.
I wish it was.
Yeah, it's way bigger than what we can fathom.
Yeah.
So if you've been listening and you feel moved or worried or unsure for yourself or for someone that you do care about, remember, you're not alone. There's so many people going through this. And I will say I went through this entirety pretty much on my own, alone. It was hard for friends to understand. It was hard for friends to keep asking about how's John, and then me having to say the same story. It took a really long time for me to just find a place. And I did find a meeting, and there are meetings you can go to. There's all kinds of support for people who are in it. And it takes that for us to be able, when I found other parents going through it, it was like, they're still so close to me. But you can also call, it's called 1-800-662-HELP or 1-800-662-4357. Apparently, anytime, day or night, it's the SAMHSA, which I think stands for something, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. So doesn't matter if you're an addict or you are up at 2 a.m. having an anxiety attack because you don't know where your child is, regardless of your role in the situation, you can call that number. So yes, and to Heather, I'm going to invite you back for a second part of this interview. So I hope all of you will come back and listen to the rest of her story and to hear some answers to some other tough questions that we didn't get to, because there's just so much. There's so much ground to cover. So, but thank you for your honesty and bravery. And I know this is just the beginning of you being able to get out there to counsel people in recovery. I think that only someone who's been through it has any credibility to help someone who's in it. So I'm super excited for what doors open for you and when that time is right. And we know that there's a divine timing and it'll be right. So this is just the beginning for you and of out there. And just this part, if that's all you do, I'm sure has touched someone in a way that no one else could have done except you. So I feel confident in that. So thank you for being here. And do you have any closing thoughts or words you want to share?
Well, thank you for having me on, because I've been through so much, and I've put myself and my family through so much in my active addiction. And I just feel with everything in me that it's to serve a purpose. And I didn't go through all that pain and darkness to not use it. And I'm feeling more and more pulled to try to use that to help others. So I really, really do. I hope someone got something out of this, and I will be happy to talk all about it all day long. If it helps somebody, I will empty out the closet, of all the skeletons. If it helps somebody, please, I hope it does. I'm an open book. And thank you for allowing me this opportunity to share my story. So
yes,
I'm looking forward to the next part.
Yeah, me too. And also for those listeners, please share this podcast. Please reach out to anyone that don't be afraid that you're going to offend them. Or if you know a mom out there or a dad out there or somebody out there who is, going through this journey with someone, please send this to them to say, this may or may not help. If they listen, great. If they don't, it's okay. But I think we're so afraid of not doing the right thing that we don't do anything, and doing nothing for someone going through this is hard. That's the hardest part of all, because it's a lonely journey.
Yes.
And to know someone's thinking of me, or someone cared enough to share something that might help, means the world. So please share. Yeah.
There is hope. There absolutely is hope for everybody. And I mean, if I was that addict on the street, sleeping in abandoned buildings, I mean, you name it, the worst. And, John and I own our own home now. Run a whole restaurant, it is possible to recover. It's a night and day difference if you're willing to do the work. You just have to get to that first step and surrender to the fact that your life is out of control. And after that, it's like a weight being lifted off of your chest, and it is possible to recover.
Right. And the recovery never ends. All of us are in recovery. It's like we all have all these wounds. We went through our own battles, whether it's through addiction or not. I just happened to, in my 10 hardest things I've ever had to go through episodes, like talk about an inspiring topic, but I feel like it is inspiring, because each of those taught me so much and gave me strength. And I'm grateful. I would take away your all suffering if I could say, I don't want anyone to go through what you all have gone through. I don't know that I would have had the resilience that I watched John have through this to keep getting up and trying again when, gosh, each relapse just was worse, and he just kept getting up and trying like you did. And I'd take all the suffering away from you. But if I can't do that, I will say I'm grateful for my side of that journey, because I think it taught me this is how we're supposed to live, is in recovery. We're supposed to be honest with ourselves. We don't need to be victims. We can become empowered, even in situations where we're powerless, right? It's like you still know that you can become empowered the minute you give up that ego power. And it taught me so much about all of it. So I just can't wait to continue our conversation. And but we will close out. Yes, and I love your closing message of it. There is always hope. So all right, you guys, don't forget to click the link in the show notes to get a meditation you can keep. And I will see you in our next episode. And so until next time, may you continue to choose love and to choose compassion and the courage to heal. I'll see you in the next episode. Take care. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you found a spark of wisdom to carry with you, and maybe even a deeper invitation to heal and grow and transform through your own beautiful story. Or maybe this episode made you think of someone who could use encouragement. And if so, I hope you will share it with them. If you'd like to learn more about working with me or attending one of my healing retreats, coaching programs, and other offerings, you can visit my website at jennyaiello.com or email me directly at jenny@jaiello.com. You'll find all the links in the show notes. If today's episode touched you, it would mean the world if you would leave a review or share it with someone who might need it, or just reach out and let me know how it landed for you. I'd love to hear from you. I'm building something special here. Real stories, real life, real connection. One episode, one heart, and one story at a time. As always, with love. Oh, and this is the legal message, but mostly a message from my heart. And I just need to share this with you right now. Please know this podcast is offered solely for educational and entertainment purposes. If you find yourself triggered due to anything that was shared in this podcast, please seek professional help. This podcast is not intended to be a substitute for mental health services. While I am a professional life coach, I am not a psychotherapist, nor am I a mental health clinician. So if you are struggling emotionally, please seek help, because you matter, You are important. And most of all, you are worthy of doing this work, the work that leads you to a better and healthier place. Okay? All right. Thank you. And please always make enough time to take care of yourself and do so with love.